Was halfway through my morning coffee when a loud, authoritative knock hit my front door, the kind that instantly tells you trouble is waiting outside. When I checked the peephole, there she was, Mrs. Hornsworth, the HOA president, standing like she owned not just the neighborhood, but my entire existence. Her pearls glistened. Her clipboard was clutched like a weapon, and her smile was so tight it looked painful. I opened the door, mostly out of politeness and a tiny bit of fear, and she walked in as if she'd been invited to inspect my soul. Without even a greeting, she said, "Mr. Thompson, we need your ID." I blinked, wondering if she had mistaken herself for a police officer, but she continued. "Failure to comply may result in legal action. We can involve law enforcement." My coffee nearly left my hand. "You're threatening me with arrest." "Over an ID?" I asked, trying not to burst out laughing. She nodded seriously, listing imaginary violations I supposedly committed, from uneven hedges to my recycling bin being improperly aligned. The more she talked, the more unreal it felt, like I was trapped in a sitcom written by someone who hated me personally. Finally, I told her calmly that she had no legal right to demand an ID, and definitely no authority to threaten arrest. She looked stunned, as if no one had ever dared to challenge her suburban dictatorship. But the moment she hesitated, I knew something. This wasn't just a request. This was a power game, and she had no idea that I was preparing to play back. After that tense standoff, I realized I couldn't let this intimidation go unanswered. Mrs. Hornsworth clearly thought she could flex her HOA authority like a badge, but I wasn't about to roll over. I spent the next few hours documenting everything, every email, every memo, even photographs of my front yard, just to prove that my violations were completely made up. I called the local authorities for advice, carefully explaining that an HOA officer had threatened me with arrest over an ID, and the officer on the phone chuckled, saying, "They don't have that power. Make sure you document everything." That gave me the confidence to plan my next move. I started keeping a detailed log of every interaction, noting time, place, and exactly what was said. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hornsworth didn't seem to realize that I was slowly turning the tables. She continued her patrols and emails, each one dripping with self-importance, each one assuming fear or compliance on my part. One afternoon, she even showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand, glaring at my mailbox and muttering something about my failure to properly display a neighborhood notice. After that ridiculous encounter, I knew I couldn't just sit back and let the HOA act like some suburban Gestapo. Mrs. Hornsworth clearly thought her pearls and clipboard gave her the power to bend reality. But I was done being intimidated. I started keeping notes. Every knock, every email, every suspicious glance she threw my way, like a detective cataloging, evidence for a crime that didn't exist. I even took pictures of my yard from every angle, documenting that my hedges were perfectly fine and my mailbox hadn't moved an inch. Then came the research. A quick call to the local police confirmed what I already suspected. She had zero authority to threaten me with arrest. That phone call felt like a secret superpower. Suddenly, I could walk a little taller, smile a little wider, and let her think she was in charge while secretly knowing I was plotting my next move. Over the next few days, she escalated her tactics. Unannounced visits, passive-aggressive emails about community, compliance, and pointed comments about my supposedly suspicious behavior. Each time she barged in, clipboard first, I greeted her with exaggerated cheerfulness and a cup of coffee as if nothing was wrong, all the while internally laughing at the absurdity of it. I began laying the groundwork for a little HOA payback. Not aggressive, just clever enough to make them squirm. Subtle social media hints, documenting every overreach, and quietly sharing the absurd. Rules with neighbors who were equally baffled. It was like setting up a slow-motion domino effect. They thought they were controlling me, but in truth, I was the one orchestrating the spectacle, waiting for the perfect moment to turn all their threats into the very thing that would expose them as the overbearing, power-hungry busybodies they really were. And I had to admit, planning it all made me feel alive in a way no quiet suburb had ever managed before. The next few days felt like living inside a bizarre sitcom directed by someone who had a grudge against me personally. Mrs. Hornsworth seemed to sense that I wasn't cowed, and her patrols became increasingly theatrical. She'd appear at random, clipboard in hand, peering over fences, jotting down notes with the intensity of a detective on a serial killer case. And sometimes she'd mutter something about community regulations, loud enough for me to hear, as if I were an unrepentant criminal instead of a guy trying to sip his coffee in peace. I decided to turn the tension into my advantage, using subtle psychological warfare that didn't break any laws but made her overbearing nature work against her. I started documenting everything meticulously, not just for my own sanity, but because I knew neighbors were watching and waiting for the inevitable collapse of HOA overreach. Every email she sent, every note she dropped off, even the way she tapped her pen while glaring at me became material for my little arsenal.